Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Binman. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up because today we are talking about the amazing book by Virginia Woolf called A Room of One's Own, so stay tuned. The theme this year is what are we fighting for? Now, we've covered lots of different types of what are we fighting for. In January, we spoke about what are we fighting for with our health, with our minds, and the power of our minds. In February, we spoke about fighting to be seen and to knowing that people like you existed in history. In March, we discussed what are we fighting for with Julius Caesar and how the mission of what we're fighting for can sometimes get confused and distorted, and then we question what we are actually fighting for. In April, we kind of carried that on into the Bone Shard War with also asking questions, what is every faction of the war fighting for? And again, lots of confusion, lots of questions behind that. This month, we are talking about women in creativity and what kind of conditions we need in order to be creative, in order to be free, in order to express ourselves. And of course, we're coming at it from Virginia Woolf's perspective and the time. But a lot of the things that she says in the book still, unfortunately, resonated with me, and I'm sure they will resonate with you as well. So at the beginning of the book, Virginia Woolf is basically, she's almost like stream of consciousness. She's been asked to give a speech about women in literature, and she finds herself questioning women in literature, like who is she going to talk about? So she goes for a stroll and she ends up in a bookstore, and all this time she's pondering what it takes to be a creative woman. Why are there so many more men that are considered great writers compared to female writers? Is it truly because women are inferior? And she pretty much puts that to rest very quickly. And she also asks the question, is it a financial thing? And that chapter I thought was really interesting because the book itself is called A Room of One's Own, right? So we are discussing the things that one needs in order to be creative. We need a quiet space. We need a room of our own. We need time, and time, because the women during Virginia Woolf's time period are mostly staying at home with the children and keeping house. They do not have time to actually create anything, nor do they have a room of their own. You could say that the whole house is theirs, but having a table in the midst of family life, in the midst of a house, isn't good enough. You need to be able to close a door. You need an actual room with walls, a door, preferably a window, but we'll take whatever, in order to shut life out so that you can be creative and be quiet and present with your own thoughts. There's a really interesting insight into the lack of money being passed down from mothers onto daughters compared to fathers onto sons. Where is the money going? Is it because the women aren't getting any money? Is it because the men control the money? But how can that possibly be when the women are actually controlling the household and running the household, yet they're not getting paid for any of the services that they're doing? And I think any stay-at-home mom has felt that way as well. You give so much of yourself and yet you get no financial assistance for that. So that can be very frustrating. There's a continuation of that discussion of why can women not give other women money? It doesn't necessarily have to pass down to a daughter. What if you don't have children? But charities that help women, and just the idea around that time of why would you want to help a woman? Why would you want to give your money to that when you could give it to more of a man's charity? And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there are definitely parts of this book that are pretty hard to read because it does still feel that way sometimes today in 2025, but it's also heartbreaking to know that this is going on and these are the thoughts of a very well-established thinker, and that there are so many women who would probably rise to the occasion of being brilliant and creative, and they're just not given the time, the space, or the finances. She goes on to create a fictional character, a sister of Shakespeare, and kind of plots her life against William Shakespeare's and saying if they came from the same family, what if William Shakespeare had a brilliant sister who was just as brilliant as he was? What would her life trajectory be? And it is very sad. And in the end, she does end up dying compared to William Shakespeare, who goes on to be William Shakespeare. Now, of course, that's not necessarily the outcome that all women took, and it's not necessarily all super sad. But it is a really interesting idea of comparing siblings and how men and women are treated and how one is encouraged compared to the other. Another very thoughtful point in the book is when she goes into a bookstore and she's thumbing through a bunch of books and reading just excerpts and kind of trying to figure out what is she going to talk about. At first she thinks maybe she will talk about finances and women, and then she starts reading fiction from men, and she notices that men are writing an awful lot about women, but not real women. They're writing about this imaginary, incredible woman that doesn't actually exist. And she asks the question, why are men so obsessed with women and women are not obsessed with men? Because she'll pick up a book by a female and it is definitely very different. The love story kind of takes a back seat almost to the life of the woman that the author is portraying compared to a male writer who the love story is pretty integral to the storyline and the characters. I thought that was a very interesting insight. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like we have kind of grown in that aspect, and both men and women are writing about men and women and all different kinds of relationships. So that was just a really interesting insight into Virginia Woolf's world. And going along with that idea of thinking that in literature, women are on a golden pedestal. They are up, they are revered, they are so important to the story, they are so important to the male lead character. And yet in real life, they are just being tossed aside. And we will kind of see this in a lot of the other books that we'll be talking about throughout the year. How women, as they try to climb into society and do different things and take back some of that power, they are just swept aside. I mean, basically like in Hidden Figures, where we just lost a whole bunch of history of female empowerment and incredible female mathematicians and scientists, and we didn't even know about that until very recently. It's just quite shocking, actually. I want to leave you with a few of my favorite quotes from the book because I do think Virginia Woolf, this is my first Virginia Woolf book, and I thought that her writing was incredible. I thought it was very succinct. It is not a long book. You will definitely get through it quickly, but it is not something that I would recommend reading quickly because you want to savor the language. You want to savor her philosophy and just think, do you agree? Do you disagree? Does it still feel like that today? I mean, lots and lots of really interesting questions. So something, again, going back to that bookstore episode when she's kind of reading bits and pieces from lots of different authors, male and female. This idea, this quote really popped out to me, and she says, "This book is important because it deals with war. Whereas this book is insignificant because it deals with the feelings of women in a drawing room." And for some reason that quote just really hit me because I've been listening to so many interviews of actors and directors and writers discussing stories in movies, stories in TV, and it just kind of hit home a little bit because there's always this discussion of, can you have a woman lead a story? And we have seen successful things of that, like Jane Austen, but there aren't enough stories where the woman is leading, and it's not necessarily a love story. It's just women living their lives and discussing what it means to be a woman, which will be very different for every woman. A funny quote that I really enjoyed was, "I need not hate any man, he cannot hurt me. I need not flatter any man, he has nothing to give me." I love her power and her independence, and she says right away in the beginning of the book that she's so thankful that she doesn't have to ask anybody for an allowance. She can just spend her money as she pleases. She is very thoughtful about her purchases, but she takes ownership over her money and how empowering that is. and she hopes and wishes for the future of women. They too will be able to control their own purse strings. The last thought I want to leave you with this book, which is so good and I highly recommend it, is hesitate or fumble and you are done for. Think only of the jump. And she really encourages women and creatives in general to just leap. Go for it. If you want to write a book, write a book. Find the time somewhere. Get up early, stay up late. Do something for yourself because it will open up worlds for you. And even if nothing happens of that, you will know that you have created something, and that is special and important in and of itself. Thank you guys so much for watching this book talk. I think it's really important to hear from female authors throughout the ages. And most importantly, to know that women did exist in history and that they were doing things besides keeping house, which there is no shame for doing that, but that there were other options and there were women who were fighting for equality and justice and all of the good things for women all along the way. I normally do fashion videos every Wednesday, beauty videos every Friday. Make sure you tune in on Friday because I'm going to take inspiration from the cover of this book and translate it into makeup, which is always a really fun creative challenge for me. If you are reading along, make sure you check below in the description box because it will have links to past book talks, where you can buy the books, what books are coming up, and of course, leave comments if you've read this book and what you thought of it and anything that you would like to share with this community. And I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye!